The topic of my presentation is what do we do if we are told that the diagnosis is not vascular dementia or Alzheimer's disease? And then, is there any hope if the diagnosis is different? I'll try to show you some of the different elements in the diagnosis of dementia. One of the questions that the families ask me more often is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Is this a different set of diseases? In reality, dementia is the umbrella term that covers all forms of dementia, whether they are the result of a series of head injuries, such as in the dementia that the boxers develop, the so-called dementia pugilistica, or the result of a number of strokes in vascular dementia, for instance, or the result of infections, for instance. As you know, there are some forms of transmitted diseases originally from the mad cow disease that can produce a very rapidly progressive dementia. And as I mentioned here, the word dementia comes from the Latin, the two parts, de, meaning without, and mens or mentis, mind. So when you tell someone you're out of your mind, you're telling that person you're demented. So, but be careful with that. Or you're crazy. So the word dementia carries these two meanings, indicating the loss of intellectual capacity, the loss of all the knowledge and information that you have acquired during your lifetime. This is essentially one of the cruelest diseases that you can find, where someone will begin to lose essentially all the values that they have acquired on the lifetime. And in some societies, in some cultures, the word dementia carries a sort of a stigma, because people think of dementia paralytica, which was produced by syphilis in the time when syphilis was essentially intractable before the use of penicillin. Or, in some cases, dementia precox, which is the old terms that the psychiatrists use for schizophrenia. As mentioned earlier, there are different categories, different types of dementia. And, of course, the largest one is Alzheimer's disease that we have, that have been mentioned here before. And then there are other types. One of the ones that is being diagnosed with growing frequency is Lewy body disease, where an abnormally folded protein destroys the neurons, especially in the back of the head, in the posterior areas where the visual information is analyzed. And these patients very often present with visual hallucinations and visual illusions. In the majority of cases, it's sort of a benign hallucination. The typical history is that you ask grandma, why do you have one more place in the table? She said, well, there's a guy who has been there all afternoon. Is he going to have dinner with us? Grandma, what's going on? So, but they don't talk to the person, and they are essentially benign, well tolerated. It's not unusual that they also perceive animals. A little cat that goes to the room, and it's the only person that can see that is the best information. Although in other locations, the hallucinations can be really very difficult. They are usually mixed with a component of Parkinson's disease, so you have this mixture between the tremor and the rigidity and the stiffness in the expressive face of the patient with Parkinson's disease, and in addition, the progressive loss of cognitive function. So that's Lewy body disease. And finally, we have the relatively large group of patients with vascular dementia, where the primary vision is indeed the blockage of the blood vessels, in some cases the rupture, or more extensive lesions in the very small blood vessels of the brain. But this very neat separation between the different categories is probably not true. The pathology has shown us in the past 5 to 10 years that the largest number of cases of dementia are the ones that have a combination of either Lewy bodies and vascular disease, or the components of Alzheimer's disease, which are the amyloid plaques and the neurofibrillary tangles. So vascular seems to be the underlying theme, the reason for developing the dementia, one of the gates that is open for these enormous proteins to fall into the brain. So mixed dementia right now is the largest group of, is the largest cause of dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. Vascular dementia was described in 1667 by this gentleman called Thomas Willis, who is well known in neurology because he invented the word neurology as a doctrine of the nerves, and he was also the one who described what we call the circle of Willis, the system of sort of communicating highways that allow the blood flow to proceed in one direction if there is a blockage in the brain. And he described that some patients will develop dullness, forgetfulness, and stupidity and foolishness. Those were the terms used at that time to describe the patient with dementia. And as you see, the reason for the importance of blood supply is that the brain is essentially the most highly vascularized organ of the economy. The number of blood vessels that you see is a true sponge of blood vessels. Although it weighs 2% of the total body weight, it uses 25% of each cardiac system. So the amount of blood that circulates to the brain is enormous. The consumption of oxygen is extremely high, and that is also true for sugar. Those are the three elements that are required for the function of the brain. If your heart starts pumping because there is a clot in one of the coronary arteries, then it produces immediate loss of consciousness. Your computer just goes off. The same is true if your blood pressure drops too quickly, or if you have other problems that will interrupt the circulation. So the circulation is critical, and for that reason, the patients who have either multiple areas of multiple holes in the brain, because there's blockage in one of those arteries, will develop a number of lesions that lead to what is called the multi-infarct or multi-stroke dementia. This is relatively common, and usually more common in patients who have cardiac arrhythmias that form thrombus in the heart, and these little emboli just go constantly to the brain, producing then a number of strokes. Sometimes, however, the strokes are very small. As you see here, just two tiny holes in the brain, deep in the brain, what is called the thalamus, one of the central areas of the brain, is enough to produce immediate dementia in the patient. That is what is called a strategic stroke. So, as you can see from this, you need to have very good condition of your heart and your blood pressure, and you need to protect your blood vessels. In some cases, the blood flow that comes from the surface of the brain in will not be enough, and the areas of communication, the white matter that was seen so clearly in the scans that Dr. Schultz showed us, produces essentially a disconnection. The highways that connect one part of the brain to the other are affected. And in San Antonio, we didn't have the opportunity to endure the traffic here in Houston, but it's like if one of the highways, 45 South, is closed, so you have to get into the detour, go into the little street, stop at the red light, turn left. So by the time you get to the highway again, you forgot what you were doing. So that's essentially what happens in patients who have these lesions that affect the small vessels of the brain. And interestingly enough, one of the factors that is responsible for this lesion of the deep blood vessels of the brain is obstructive sleep apnea. Some of you may have heard that people who snore, sometimes it's not the noise which is inverted, but it's the periods of complete silence when there is no oxygen. And the response of the body is the same response that you get if someone was strangling. There is no oxygen, so the brain wakes you up with a kick of adrenaline, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate increases, and you wake up gasping for air. And the problem is that this doesn't happen once or twice at night. Our patients may go 30, 40, 60 times every hour with periods of apnea. So at the end, they have been through the night, essentially through a marathon. They are sweating in the morning, they are completely soaked in perspiration, the blood pressure is high in the morning, they may retain CO2, they develop a headache. And since the sleep has been fragmented, they have not rested. They have not had the opportunity to go into deep sleep. And deep sleep is absolutely critical for the storage and the appropriate collection of information. They say that the brain stores and files the information that we acquire during the day during these periods of deep sleep. So we're finding that lack of sleep is certainly one of the main risk factors for loss of memory. How do we make the diagnosis? Well, imaging is quite good. In this case, you can see that you can actually reconstruct not only the bony anatomy, but the blood vessels. And if you have the appropriate isotope, in this case fluorodeoxyglucose, you can actually see how the isotope is present in the brain. And now we have another technique, an MRI technique, called field spectral imaging, whereby the radio signal kind of tags the blood vessels without having to inject any isotope or any contrast medium. And the radio signal rebounds on the red cells, so you can follow them and reconstruct in the computer the blood flow of the brain. And this has been extremely helpful in helping us measure the amount of blood flow that goes to the brain. And now the point, as you see in this paper from 2004, some time ago, is that sometimes we don't know if the patient has Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia or both. The answer, finally, is that probably both is the most frequent diagnosis, the presence of small blood vessel lesions and the presence of Alzheimer's. And you can actually determine that patients who have early Alzheimer's disease have very little flow in the medial part of the brain, as you can see, very nice amount of blood flow, and in the medial portion, in a person of the same age, there is no blood flow in those regions. So if we find a way to do that, to increase our blood flow, then, as Paul was saying, exercise is probably the answer. You may not want to go like having to go with iron, pump the iron every morning at 5 o'clock, like John is doing. But certainly exercise, and intensive exercise, aerobic exercise should be good. So go back to your stationary bag that is collecting dust in the back of the back room and start doing exercise. I think it's an excellent way of improving your circulation, to remove some of the toxins and the oxidants that are produced. And if this is not appealing, you can go back to dancing. Dancing certainly is quite important and a very good exercise. So you can choose either Zumba, or you can have the jazz exercise, or just good old time dancing certainly will give you enough motivation to continue losing weight and improving your sugar and your general well-being. Now, visualizing the brain has been difficult, essentially because the brain is inside a fortress of bone that protects it. And these are pictures from Leonardo da Vinci, and he was following the leaders. Galen has said that the brain has 3 ventricles. So the initial paintings, he drew a brain with 3 ventricles inside. And then he was not convinced that was true, and he invented a method whereby in a cadaver he would inject hot wax. And after the wax had settled down, then he was able to demonstrate that indeed the brain has not 3 ventricles, but a series of structures that are called the human ventricles. And this is a paper from 1919, when the only way to visualize the structure, the inside, these cavities inside